Why do we like to play hard games? The short answer is, it's the taste of the good shit! It's like a drug! Long answer is, as you can see, I've played fighting games quite a lot. Mostly Guilty Gear because that's my favorite game. New things are hard. They're either going to challenge you to overcome them, and then you're going to chase that high and do something even harder after that, or you're going to give up and just move on to something new, which is totally fine and what a lot of people do with newer titles and newer games. More complexity means more things to learn, means when you do learn those things, it feels good to learn those things and pull that off in a match and monkey brain go brrr. A lot of this stuff can come down to feeling like a knowledge check, which for newbies is completely infuriating, but in reality can be a very satisfying back and forth between players who both know their options and situations. It makes for a more fleshed out and interesting game to watch and play endlessly. These kinds of situations and knowledge checks may be why some people might not feel like they're good at fighting games, but they just like to play whatever is new or jump in on any new game, because of course, anything that is new means something to learn, and pulling it off is what you're there for, whether you're good at it or not. Starting new and fresh is fun, because you see tangible results. The dopamine is highest. You're actually seeing progress. There is nothing wrong with simpler games, but veteran and longtime players of other more complicated games, for example, may not find as much dopamine and reward in learning and playing said game. A lot of players are going to be chasing that high of doing hard things, which is the path to progress. It's always the beginning of every game, and it tends to keep games alive longer than usual by finding newer things to discover and harder tech and cooler combos, or even just ridiculous things overall. It's quite hard to define a hard game, ironically. It's very subjective, but it could mean things like less overall options per character, meaning every character isn't a Swiss Army knife and only has very specific set of tools. It could mean less universal mechanics, or more individual mechanics that you have to learn character to character and case by case. Of course, an older game does not make it inherently a harder or better game. However, there is a trend when making games more accessible tends to come down to simplifying mechanics or inputs, or just kind of removing things entirely from games that made them difficult to begin with. And I'm all for accessibility, but these can have negative consequences. I'm going to use an example of a hard game, +R, and compare it to an easier game that you may not expect it to be. Exerd. Exerd Slayer is a little bit slower, has a few less options, and overall easier bread and butters. Not as many links and complete lack of FRCs. There are a lot of tools in Exerd Slayer's toolkit that function about the same as +R Slayer as well, but that's a topic for another time. Exerd Slayer gets to use his K pile bunker, which is going to give you a wall splat no matter what, counter hit or not, pretty much anywhere, and can get a lot of damage off of it. Meanwhile, +R Slayer needs to use 25 meter to use his D pile bunker, which does give a wall splat and doesn't even always guarantee a follow-up. It is spacing dependent and height dependent, and of course, character dependent as well. Another example would be Slayer's 6P. As godly of a button as it is in both games, in Exerd it is much easier to use and convert off of compared to +R. +R you can use 25 meter to FRC it to convert into way higher damage combos and be safer overall with it, whereas in Exerd you can always YRC, but it functions a little bit differently and slows down the entire game. Going into Exerd coming from +R, YRC actually feels more like a nuisance since FRCs are fast, doesn't slow down the game, and gives your opponent less time to react overall. This in turn rewarding you for knowing when the FRC is going to be and knowing what to do immediately afterwards. YRC of course, once again, just kind of pauses the game and still leaves little room to react, but still way more than an FRC. Don't get me wrong, YRCs are still extremely fucked up and a lot of characters can use and abuse it to their heart's content, and it's actually a lot of fun to do so if you are those types of characters. I mean, just look at Ino using YRC, or Elfo with her JD, or even Slayer with Helter Skelter. Yeah, that's still 25 meter, I don't care if you had to block that. The point of this all being is that Exerd still has obviously difficult mechanics that even if they are more forgiving than +R, still make for a fantastic game with a lot of open-ended learning that has to be done and plenty of dopamine to be collected. +R as a whole is a harder game because it's a lot less lenient in its controls and buffer, so you have to hit everything exactly as you need it to be. Those links are going to be earned. So of course, once you get control of said character, it's a lot more exceptionally satisfying to hit links and mixes with. Of course, more effort yielding more reward. There's less frame buffer and tight links and combos, but hey, that's what you're there for, right? It's all a learning process. There is a reason I do not play Ino in +R. A little bit of backstory. I played Exerd first than any of the other Guilty Gear games, and I ended up maining Ino, and she's a lot of fun in that game. However, in +R, trying to play her in that game is so much more difficult, mostly because of the FRCs and the effort that it takes to link all of her combos together compared to Exerd, which simplifies it significantly. I'm looking at you 6 HCL FRC 6 combos, god damn it. At first when I was playing both games, it didn't really feel much difference switching between +R and Exerd, but as I got more in-depth with the +R version and had to learn all the links and how to use all the timings very effectively to actually do all of my combos, and learning the hard way, going to Exerd felt way easier and less rewarding to hit the high damage stuff. Don't get me wrong, K pile bunker combos are still super sick, but it doesn't have that same oomph as a D pile bunker counter hit.
Damn!
And just to splurge about +R a little bit more, it has of course the best rollback that I've ever played with, the best feature in a fighting game in general, which is a replay feature that records every single one of your matches, every single one, ever, and the ones that you even spectate. And you could even jump in at any point for either player and just play out that scenario again to see what would have been, or what could have happened, or what option you could have used instead. It is the best feature ever. This is the best thing. Just play it. Fucking buy it. Play it now. All of these mechanics now lead up to me and my opinion of another game. I love Strive's music. I love Strive's music, is what I'm trying to say. So yeah, as you can expect, Strive for me was not very appealing after the first month wore off, because I learned pretty much everything I had to do at the time, and as mad as I was about how they changed Chip, I still played as much as I could and tried to learn all of the cool things that I could, but yeah, I felt like the laundry list of things to learn was a lot shorter. You really don't want to run out of things to learn and do in a game in the first month of release, that's for sure. And when you do see some new tech discovered in a game and it's really not that much better than what we were doing beforehand, and maybe not even much more damage than what you were doing with your regular bread and butters, well, yeah, the motivation's a lot less there. Sorry, Virgil. There were a lot of mechanics that were changed for Strive. Mostly the tech out situation where characters would no longer get out of combos in the air. It's more of a juggle system, kind of like a Mortal Kombat. No tech out resets, no tech out air throw resets. You could just be asleep at the wheel in the air and just blocking your way down without faultless defense. I-being was harder for some reason. No more frame 1 throws. More linear and guaranteed setups from OTG. It was overall less buttons per combo, and therefore less effort and less dopamine for me. Meanwhile, in the previous games, if you were asleep at the wheel and didn't faultless defense or just teched out at the wrong time, they could just reset you and get a full combo and probably kill you for it. It's not really a get fucked, this is a knowledge check you idiot situation. It's more of a stay engaged with the game and be always on your toes at all times. It's a lot more fun, in my opinion, to be doing that than sitting there waiting for the combo to end and waiting for your character to hit the ground, or wall splat in this case. When I hit 2H at the wall with Chip and get that full wall combo, yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm a fan of that. But it's kind of like a razor scooter to the ankle instead of the freight train a D pile bunker counter hit feels like and the reward you get as well. This mostly comes down to the effort required to finish said combo. A wall run combo is, you know, relatively difficult to learn at first, but once you get it, it's pretty easy and you can kind of do whatever you want. And there are harder things that Chips can do, I'm sure, since I played last time. But learning how to do a D pile bunker counter hit conversion and all the options and possibilities you can do to make that even better was a lot more work than that wall run combo will ever be to me. I'm not saying any of these mechanics in Strive are worse or better than things in Exerd or +R, but hitting a 2-frame FRC to get a full combo and kill your opponent when you otherwise could have missed it and lost is way better of a feeling than doing this in Strive. I like to use this example because Killer Instinct 2013 is a fantastic game with rollback, and it was the first fighting game I was ever pretty good at. Got top 32 at one point, don't at me. Killer Instinct constantly engages you because even while you are getting hit, you are still playing the game. You have to see what your opponent is doing and break their combo based on the strength that they're using to hit you. And even while you are comboing, you have to watch out for your opponent breaking your combos, and of course, that dopamine rush of staying constantly engaged and reading your opponent even while you're still currently attacking them with a counter breaker is the most satisfying feeling I've ever felt in a fighting game at that time. Speaking of engagement during combos and breaking said combos, bursting, burst throwing, in +R and Exerd is one of the best feelings in the world. Some people even call it a soul steal. It's a complete denial of an option that your opponent usually has access to at any time. In Strive, you can no longer throw bursts. It is not throwable. In all the previous games, it is still throwable, and feels fantastic. Some would argue that throwing a burst is taking away the agency of the other character, especially when there are option selects available to pretty much do this at all times. But then that comes down to the opponent, therefore knowing an option select exists and choosing not to burst, and usually surviving because of it, especially if someone hard baits it like an idiot. The constant 3D chess in the player's brains going back and forth is the fun part of the game. Is he going to burst? Is he not going to burst? Is he going to OS the burst? Can I tell if he's OSing the burst? Do I survive this if I hold it the entire time? Do I burst at a completely different time than when he normally does the option select in general? There are so many options when it comes to this, and that's just for adding one slight property to a move of letting it be throwable. And in the end, blocking a burst and punishing it is always going to be better than throwing it anyway. It's just about sending a message and stealing that good old soul. Also, it's hype as fuck. I think the argument is starting to devolve more into why a complex game is better than a simpler game. But once again, simple versus easy and hard versus complex, they're loosely related, so I'll leave this in. If you want a non-Guilty Gear example, I love Melty Blood. Type Lumina is a great game for what it is. It feels like I've learned pretty much everything in the game already. The ceiling is still pretty high, but definitely lower than the Melty Blood Actress Again current code by far. There's a lot more characters to learn, about 90 or so based on all the moons that they have. There's harder combos in general, and zero exists. Thank God. For you non-fighting game players out there, League of Legends, right? There's like hundreds of heroes and lots of things to learn, but some people tell me that Dota is like the +R to League of Legends Strive because there's even more things that I don't understand, and I should not be talking about this at all. So anyway, something Dark Souls. Some simpler games even get stuff added to it through DLC and just title updates, like Dragon Ball FighterZ getting more assists, or just adding new DLC characters like Labco 21. Actually, no, wait, that one seems way more forced. There's just more information to learn and deal with and recognize, and I think that does make for a more enriching experience and a lot more fun. This is more on the topic of why learning things is fun again, but when BlazBlue got rollback finally, it was a lot more fun to relearn the entire game or even just learn new characters for the first time. That's why I spent so much time on stream picking so many different characters, because more stuff to learn was more fun and a lot more satisfying. That's why I even bought Eunice, because if it does get rollback one day, all those characters are just waiting for me to dive in and learn the mechanics of. Sucking Killer Instincts even more. Almost every season they added a completely new mechanic that changed how entire characters, neutral, and even combos worked. It was a lot of fun to learn, relearn, and even unlearn things that you had to do beforehand. So if people shit on a game because it's easy, they're just addicts being brought to an intervention and shown what withdrawal really feels like. So I get why people may like Strive and other easier games more than harder, more complex games. Maybe they don't have time to invest in one game for a longer period of time than maybe I would like to do. Learning many easier tasks compared to a single hard thing does sound better on paper. But in my opinion, I think it's worth it to give one thing you think is really cool, one long, hard look, and deep dive into that, and hopefully someday you'll do something that's worth saying.
Oh, that was so sick!
Thank you for listening to my rambling. I wrote this all in one day, as you could probably tell. It's probably awful, but I just want to get my thoughts out there because I like fighting games and I like hard things. It's fun. Don't take that out of context. And here's my friend All Salty Sean. If you tend to like ESO for some reason and also like fighting games for some reason, here's your guy. He's on my channel a lot too, so take a look. He's very well informed, entertaining. And here's my friend Shobani. He has some sets of us playing games and some Smash for some reason, so don't ban me. And thanks for watching, everybody. Cue the monkey noise now.